This video is going to cover question 2, part B from the 2021 AP Calculus AB free response calculator required section of the test. I cover A, B, C, and D all in their own individual videos, so if you're looking for A, C, or D, you're going to want to check out a different video of mine. This one's just going to be talking about part B. So part B here wants to know, are the particles P and Q moving toward each other or away from each other at time t equals 1? When we talk about the movement of particles in terms of these physics situations, what we want to know is, how do I determine which direction is which? Well, that all boils down to velocity. And if we have a positive velocity in terms, since these are both on the x-axis, so if you go back up here, if both of them are moving along the x-axis, positive velocity would mean moving to the right, moving in the positive direction. Moving forward, you might think about it that way. If it's a negative velocity, then that means it's moving to the left. It's moving back the other direction. And so what we want to know is, how do we find this out? Well, on part A, we found out where these things were at time t equals 1. So at some level, it's kind of helpful to know where they're at, because then if they're both moving to the left or they're both moving to the right, it's going to affect our answer. So particle P, the first particle there, we found out that at t equals 1, particle P is at 5.371 on the x-axis. And then we found out that particle Q is at 8.564. Now what we want to know is, are these things going to be moving towards each other? Like, is P going to have a positive velocity and Q going to have a negative velocity, so they move towards each other? Or are they going opposite directions, right? Could P be moving this direction and Q be moving the other direction? So to find this out, what we need to do is we got to figure out what each of their velocities are at this point t equals 1. Which is great because we've got a calculator, so we can do all this in our calculator. So for particle P right now, we would want to know what is V of 1. So we would take 1 and we would plug it into this equation. So the sine of 1 to the 1.5. And all we're looking for out of here is positives and negatives. And then Q, we would want to plug into the Q equation for velocity, which would be this equation right here. So then we would say V of 1 for Q is going to equal, and then 1 minus 1.8, and then 1.25 to the first. So we plug in 1 everywhere we see a T in these, and we'll see if they're moving positive or negative on our velocity. You could type those into the front part of your calculator pretty quick and easy, but if I've got these equations already in my y equals, it's really kind of straightforward to get your answers out there. So I showed you in the previous video that you can scroll over top of the equals signs and hit enter, and that'll highlight them or unhighlight them. So if they're not highlighted, they're not being graphed. So right now I just want to talk about the P function, which is the one in y1. So I would hit enter on that equals to make that the one that graphs. And then I hit graph on that. Remember, you want to make sure you're in radian mode on this. And from there, I just can trace the value that I'm interested in. I hit the trace button once and I type in 1, hit enter, and I get out 0.841. So again, we don't really care about the number, we just care whether it's positive or negative. So P is positive, that means it's moving to the right. So right now, off of my little drawing here, this is why the drawing is helpful, I know that I'm moving to the right with P. And then I would come back in. I've already got the equation in here. I just turn off y1 by hitting enter. I turn on y2 by scrolling down to the equals and hitting enter. And then I graph that one. And again, I can just hit trace, type in 1, hit enter, and I get out y equals negative 1. And so that tells me that my velocity on Q is negative 1. Negative tells me that's all I really care about. Negative is telling me that I'm moving to the left. And so I know that Q here is moving that direction to the left. And so what that tells me is I can now conclude that these are moving towards each other. So a little picture with the right and the left on it, and you're pretty much good to go. What they would want to see out of you here to earn your points, really, there's only 2 points available on this one. They kind of want you to show them this work here would equal a point for getting both of these. And then your final conclusion with something like that would be 1 point there, so 2 points for part 2b. Thanks for watching my video. If you liked it, please click that like button and subscribe. And also share it with your friends and anyone else you know who might be crying about an upcoming AP Calc test. You can find more videos from me, more sample AP Calc questions, and my complete AP Calc study guide over at my website, apcalcprep.com. Have a great one.